Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for a very special episode of our live Q&A series. My name is James, and today I'm joined by Mr. Toby from Origin Design. Toby, it's great to have you with us today.
Hi, James. It's a pleasure to dial in.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. Obviously, you're a very busy man with your business. And today we also have Mr. Chris Green, who is our area manager for the northeast of England and Scotland, who is our laser expert. Thank you again, Chris.
No problem, James. Thanks, Toby, for coming on. Grateful.
Thank you, guys. Today, the theme of this live Q&A is actually starting a successful laser business. Toby has actually got quite a few different laser businesses, and Origin Design is one that he started when he got his first laser machine. So we're going to find out a little bit more about him. The format of this Q&A session is going to be a little bit different to our usual ones. We're going to find out about Toby and his business, find out about his different lasers and how he uses them all in conjunction with each other. And then if there's any live questions, once we've finished ours, we will get to them afterwards. You can put them to Chris if it's general laser, put them to Toby if it's about starting your own laser business, or if you have any general questions, put them in the chat and we will get to them. But in the meantime, we will start our questions if you guys are ready.
Sure. Yeah.
By the way, Jim.
Fantastic. So the first question, Toby, is like I've said, you've got a few businesses. Can you tell us about how you got started and particularly your laser business?
Yeah. So I guess we make a wide range of different products. All the way from small format signage. We make jewelry products from various metals. We make sports memorabilia and trophies. We've started making a range of small format housewares and furniture. I guess like a lot of businesses that have lasers, particularly in the past few months, we've made quite a few screens for local businesses. So we found that, particularly on the local high street, many of the shops have ended up with screens that we've made for COVID protection on our lasers. We split those products out amongst a few different businesses. So we've got a jewelry business that obviously does jewelry. We've got a design business that does memorials and sports memorabilia, and we recently split our furniture ideas into a separate business called Origin Crafts. So we use a variety of machinery to make those products, mainly lasers because they're so versatile, but we also use CNC.
Excellent. And Chris, I think you've got some questions about Toby's laser use, haven't you?
Yeah, so I met Toby well back in 2015. And so the first question really to ask Toby has got to be, what was the first laser you bought and why?
Right, that's a good one. We certainly did a lot of research into buying our first laser to make sure that it was going to be fit for purpose. It was going to do what we needed it to do. We set up the first business we set up was the jewelry business, and at the time it imported most of its products from China, mainly low value costume jewelry items. We changed that now. We make many of our own products instead of importing, but at the time, we got very, very lucky in that we got the most successful products in its class on Amazon UK, but also North America. So we went from a very, very small pastime into selling literally thousands and thousands of units every month. Now, we rapidly hit a packaging problem. We ran out of UK suppliers to supply us with jewelry boxes of a certain size, and we were having to put in larger and larger orders with lead times getting pushed further and further back, simply to package our products. And it got to the point where we couldn't keep up. So we decided to look at making our own packaging. And in researching that, we found that lasers could be used in a very small production environment to make a large amount of packaging. So with a view to that, we did our research and we came up with all the standard names that anyone would. Trotec kept on coming up, although they were more expensive than other options. We did have a local showroom on the doorstep, and because of the reliability and ease of use questions, then we eventually made contact with Chris, and we got the first laser we decided to get was a Speedy 100. We were using that mainly to cut out thin MDF laminates or plywood to make our own packaging, and for that reason, the machine was absolutely fantastic. You know, it had all the speed, it had all the power we need. Even though since then we've come to realise that we use much faster and more powerful machines since then, but at the time it's absolutely fantastic. It enabled us to make thousands and thousands of jewellery boxes every month. That in itself led to a happy problem in that we quite quickly realised there's actually better uses for a machine like that than just making packaging. So we slowly started to design other products for use on that machine, and those products became more successful than the packaging that we were making. So we ended up finding a company in China to make our packaging, getting our products packaged in Guangdong and then mailed over to us rather than making packaging ourselves. And that released the laser, and our design company grew from having that laser and developing the products that we had in the jewelry business. So the reason our businesses took off was very much consequence of getting that first 100 laser.
It does seem like a long time ago since we took it out the van and put it into the first place with the sort of the back garden workshop or shed as we
I think that was 2016, wasn't it, Chris? Yeah, it's
yeah, it does seem a long time ago, and you've grown very, very quick since it's late 2020 now. And yeah, you've got a couple of our machines, which we understand that you've got a couple of different lasers. You've got a couple from ourselves and a couple from elsewhere. So that leads us on to the next question: is we know you've got them. So what applications do you use maybe on your other brands to the Trotec ones?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. To put that into context, from sort of sizing, really, we started our jewelry business off literally on a landing in a room with my wife and I, working 9 to 5 professional jobs. So we did the business was very much a side venture. From that, as Chris mentioned, we moved into a shed. Chris helps us install our first laser. Now, 4 years or so later, well, less than 4 years, we're in a 2,500 square foot warehouse with 10 separate machines. Some of them are pretty large format, big lasers with big beds. Other ones are relatively small with small beds. So over that time, we've gone from producing a few tens of products to well over 1,000 different products when we include all the variations that we do. Some of those are very simple products, but other ones are not. They require several stages to the manufacturing process. Now, we work with a lot of engraving, particularly when we manufacture memorials for people. For that side of the business, we need a very, very high quality product because people, quite rightly, have high expectations for a quality of any memorials that they're getting for a dead loved one or a dead pet. So we use very high quality Trotec engraving lasers to produce high quality engraving. But at the same time, some of those products need like a wooden backing or an acrylic backing that you don't need a very high quality laser to make. You just need a more basic one that maybe has a large bed size, so you can produce lots and lots of units. So I was ignorant as far as laser technology is concerned when I first started out. Over time, I've learned different kinds of lasers that different businesses use for different purposes. So it breaks down into three main categories. For the very high detailed work that we do, we use what's called an RF, or radio frequency source laser, which has a very tight beam, and that allows you to give very high detailed, defined engraving results. For cutting blanks out of wood, out of acrylic, and also we've gone back to making packaging, mainly cardboard. There's no need to have high-end radio frequency source laser. We use what you find in most Chinese machines, which are what's called a DC, or direct current laser, which typically has a wider beam. It's not as accurate, it doesn't work as quickly, but it's absolutely fine for sitting and cutting out cardboard or acrylic or wood all day. So I guess the question comes down to horses for courses, really. If you are carrying out very detailed work, then it's well worth spending the extra and getting a high-end RF laser source machine that probably has servo motors that works and enable you to produce a lot of very high-quality products in a short time. Conversely, if you sit and cut in wood all day, there's no need to have a very high-quality laser. A cheaper DC source will do the job just as well for you. So I guess there's one other source that we use. We use fiber laser to engrave metal as well. We make a wide variety of different metal products, and a fiber laser comes in very useful for doing those in an economic way. So, in a nutshell, we use small format, high-end RF lasers to make detailed memorial products in particular, and we use large format DC source lasers to cut out blanks that we use in conjunction with the RF lasers to make a finished product. Does that give you a flavour of the business and what we use different lasers for?
Absolutely, yeah. Toby.
Yeah, sorry, James. Yeah, definitely. I think we've chatted before of where your purchase has been in terms of, like you said, you're engraving, you need a high quality Trotec laser to do that. Obviously the speed to do that as well, and then just like you've mentioned, to cut something out, that's why you went down the glass tube route. So yeah, we understand that. So the next thing to come into there, obviously, which leads in from the next question we have: how does your purchase process adapt to match the type of application you need? So I'm guessing if you want a high quality engraving product, we're going to purchase that machine. If you just want something to cut out, we're going to go along the other route.
That's right. Right. So there is a kind of equation that I think it pays to give good consideration to, and that is we use, as I mentioned, high-end RF source lasers to carry out detailed engraving work. Typically, they have a smaller bed size in comparison with the cheaper, mainly Chinese source DC lasers. The price difference is about a factor of 4 or 5. So most people would look at that and say, "Well, what would I get for spending 4 times or 5 times the amount?" One factor that is not considered routinely is speed. So typically, higher end lasers work using servo motors. And for some of our machines, they work at around about 4 meters a second, whereas a Chinese machine will generally work with stepper motors, which will a maximum speed of about half a metre a second. So in terms of output, the machine that costs 4 to 5 times the cheaper machine that works with servo motors can actually work out cheaper per product that you make, simply because it's generating more products more quickly. So if you're carrying out lots of engraving, a higher end machine works out much cheaper than a lower end machine. Conversely, as I said before, if you're cutting out wood, you're just doing mainly cutting of materials, then you're probably better off getting the cheaper machine. Another factor to consider is maintenance. We have a couple of Chinese lasers. We got our first one in, I think it was June 2019. And in the past 16 months, it's had about a month of downtime where I've had to learn how to fix it, basically. So you've got to factor in downtime as well. You're going to have very little downtime with a Trotec laser compared to a Chinese laser in particular. So I think there's a few factors to consider when you're considering buying a machine. Principally, it's what is your main purpose with that machine. You can carry out perfectly good engraving with a cheaper machine, but it's not going to be quite as good as an RF source laser, and it's going to be much, much slower, generally about an eighth of the speed.
That's great, that, Toby. And suppose that will lead us into our next question. You've already talked about the benefits of an RF source versus the DC, but what are the key benefits for your business, in particular, of running a Trotec laser alongside your other lasers?
Well, yeah, James, I think I just touched on it before that you've got to be prepared to get your hands dirty if you're spending a relatively small amount of money on a Chinese machine or a Chinese source machine. You'll find that a lot of UK or EU companies will buy in Chinese machines and rebrand them. Don't get me wrong, you can get some very, very good quality Chinese machines, but they're not generally as good quality as machines that are built in Western Europe or North America even. So that brings with it a learning curve. You've got to be prepared to learn how to swap out power supplies, change out the laser source itself. You've got to be prepared to go through fault finding, and you've got to be well kitted out. It pays to have a good toolkit and a lot of research into making these things work. Conversely, with a Trotec machine, you've generally got a lot of help at hand, so you don't need to have as much fixing expertise. Trotec, in our experience, has been absolutely fantastic with giving us technical support. So whenever anything goes wrong, we can get an answer about what that is very, very quickly, usually over the phone. Much more rarely if you need a call out or a service, it's there and it's always available. So it gives you a lot of confidence when you're running a business that you're not going to have, in my case, a month of downtime out of 16 months.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of downtime that within that period of time, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Having said that, the machine itself is, it's you can't really fault it for what it does. It mainly sits away in the background and makes small format signage that isn't particularly detailed. It's got blocky graphics or large text, and it just sits there and does its thing. And just occasionally, I have to jump in and spend a few days figuring out how to fix it when it's going to run.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Toby. So we've recently launched, or Trotec have recently launched a DC tube range of machines. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, if as I said, we have two Chinese machines. Had Trotec machines been available that use the same technology, at a similar price point, it would be a no-brainer for us to go with the Trotec machines, simply because of the build quality and support issue. as I said, you don't have to get your hands dirty if there's a Trotec engineer at hand, and it gives you that confidence to get on with running other parts of your business than learning how to fix lasers. So yeah, we would. If those machines had been available when we bought our Chinese machines, we would have gone with Trotec, definitely.
Perfect, Toby.
Perfect.
That's perfect, yeah. And I think the last main question we have for you is, like you've already covered, you've got your laser to do one specific thing, but then you ended up forming a new business and doing something totally different, and you've gone on from there. So what would you say your top tips are to anybody who's actually looking to start their own laser business?
Well, that's a very good question. Obviously, there's a lot of luck involved, and I consider myself a very lucky person. But you've got to be prepared to work very, very hard for a long period of time before you can reasonably expect to get a decent payback. Obviously, I've been able to give up the day job and run the business full time, but it has taken pretty much, it took 3.5 years to get to that point where I could completely give up my previous career. I think if I was starting again, then I would develop many more products more quickly. I think if you in this line of business, quite often on YouTube or wherever, you get adverts saying if you had one very successful Amazon product, then it has the potential to change your life. Well, it certainly does have the potential to change your life, but it will keep you up at night because you'll be so worried about keeping that one product successful. It's probably not worth it. You're far better off having far more less successful products, because if anything goes wrong with any one of them, it doesn't matter. So I think products range and variety is extremely important. I guess another way of saying it, just don't keep all your eggs in one basket. What else would I recommend? You have to be very, very good at marketing. Product photography is key. So sit down and learn how to take excellent product photographs, because that's what your competitors are doing. Generally, you've got about 2 seconds to sell a product when a customer looks at what you're selling online, and most of that 2 seconds is taken up with looking at the first or lead image. So you have to be very, very good at doing that. Cut your losses is another one. We tried for years to get a successful website and failed miserably. We tried a couple of years ago. We spent £13,000 employing a contractor to design and build a really, really flashy, all singing, all dancing website. And I think before we pulled the plug, I think we turned over £2,000 on it. So we lost a huge amount of money on it. Since then, we took the opposite approach. We designed a really quite basic, poor website, but spent a lot of money on marketing, and that's become very successful in a very short period of time. So yeah, don't be afraid to make mistakes, cut your losses and move on. But again, don't give up. What else could I say? I think we worked very, very hard over a considerable period of time to set up our businesses. So there's no substitute for graft. I think I'm not sure if I answered your question there, but that's as many tips as I could think of.
No, Toby, that's perfect. I think as well, we're seeing a lot of people you hear talking on the news how they've just started a business with the whole COVID and lockdown. They've taken the opportunity to finally take the plunge. So it's like you say, that's kind of the great advice you need, because some people will be like, well, I want to do it, just don't know how to actually do it.
Yeah, well, we made it up as we went along. There was no rule book, there was no guide. So I guess a lot of it is, luck and instinct as well.
Absolutely. And you've grown, like you say, you're now really successful with 4 different businesses. So it's kind of like a little acorns planted, and then from there success comes, isn't it?
Well, let's hope that continues. Yeah. So it's gone from in 4 years from literally an 8 foot by 6 foot space on a landing to a decent sized warehouse with 10 production machines and 12 staff. Yeah. So by any measure, that's not bad.
Yeah, no, I find it quite remarkable, if I'm honest with you, Toby. From seeing where we started, 4 years ago to where you are now, to see the factory that you're in now, I think it's very much credit to both of you, really.
Well, thanks for the praise, Chris. That means a great deal. But obviously, particularly at the start of COVID, we had to furlough, like many other businesses, most of our staff. We kept one member of staff on, but she was working at home. The business was sustained by myself and my wife, working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I've got to be honest, I'm not just saying this, but we didn't switch on our Chinese lasers during that time. We depended on our Trotec machines simply because of the speed and the quality that they gave us. So we were able to work very efficiently using 2 Speedy 300 machines to keep on top of the business. We did that for nearly 2 months before we could bring staff back. After that, we switched on our other machines and we eventually got back to normal. But that was a difficult thing to do. We couldn't have gotten through it without those Trotec machines, I'll be honest.
Great, that's great, Toby. Honestly, and I think you've invested in some new lasers as well recently. So again, like you say, hard work does pay off.
Yeah, well, fairly recently we got a Trotec 400 flex machine, which has combined RF CO2 laser with a fiber machine as well. So I touched on it earlier on. We use that machine to engrave mainly stainless steel, but also we use it to personalize jewelry items made of silver, gold, or whatever. It's extremely versatile. Prior to that, we were using one of these very cheap open Chinese galvo lasers, which could certainly cut through a piece of steel, but you wouldn't want to be anywhere near it without safety gear.
Yes, it did look. It looked interesting when I seen it.
Yeah. So but it did a job for a few months. But now it's we get much better quality engraving with the 400 flex machine.
Great.
Perfect, Toby. Do you have anything to add, Chris? Or
I don't think so. I think it's like I said before, credit to Toby over the 4 years since he first came to see myself, and we sold him the Speedy 100. We got that into his struggling to get it out of the van and up his garden path into sort of the shed workplace to where he is now. It's a real credit to where you are now.
Long may it continue, Chris. Yeah. Obviously, as time goes on, you do find that these machines depreciate less than other machines. So when it comes to upgrade, then there straight away is a pathway just to maintain sort of any lease or loan or rental costs on the machinery. We do a range of different purchase options on them, but we've always got in the back of our minds that we'll probably trade these machines in and hopefully trade up to bigger, larger machines as technology advances.
Let me just put the light on there. There we go.
As if by magic.
Yes.
No, that's great, Toby. Well, guys, thank you for that. We've got some actual live questions as well. Are we ready to have a go into them?
Yeah, feel free, James. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Excellent. The first one is Michael Leonard. It says, as a novice, how do I get my image engraved onto a substrate? I know it is via a computer, but how do you get the image onto the computer?
So hi, Mike. Right, okay, so we'll need some sort of graphics program. We run CorelDRAW in the showrooms. You will need some graphic software and a little bit of knowledge. We can kind of help around that. If you popped into the showroom, we can kind of show you how to get that image from a Google search, or just to maybe start designing that image in CorelDRAW, some sort of design program. So you do need some sort of design program is the answer to the question.
Excellent. Thank you for that info, Chris. Amy from Mischief Pop's watching us. Hi again, Amy. Thank you for tuning in.
Hi, Amy.
And the next, we got two questions from Graham Taylor. The first one, I think they might actually be connected, but the first one is CO2 and fiber, processing brass plate and finding thicker line weight on the CO2. Not good definition on samples from two laser machine suppliers. I wonder why. Been an engraver 48 years, so quality, not just speed.
Okay, Graham, it would be interesting to know what CO2 machine we're running. Toby did mention before there is a difference between a glass tube and an RF tube when we do engrave, and you will find a thicker line weight on a glass tubed machine versus an RF CO2 laser, that is. I always find black coated brass plate, I don't really do that often, if I'm honest with you. Normally I've done a normal brass plate. We'll put some ceramic paste on it and we'll laser that in using the CO2, or we'll fiber that straight away. It will be interesting seeing some pictures to see what the issue may be, to see how maybe we can advise on what quality that you're getting, and how you mean by the thicker line weight on the CO2. It would be very interesting seeing that.
I think from reading through there, Graham, it may well just be a question of getting the right settings, especially on the fiber machine. We use CNC machines as well, and we can't get anywhere near the definition that we can using fiber, using an engraving tool. So I think it's worth persevering with what the right settings are. Particularly if you intend to use a fiber. I'd be very surprised if you couldn't get an excellent quality result if you can put in a bit of time working out what the optimum focus settings, optimum speeds and fluids and so on are concerned.
It's good advice, guys. Thank you very much. I think Graham's second comment is a bit more general, but he's saying water cooling system. As water warms up whilst engraving, doesn't need a chiller, so he probably has got a glass tube laser with regard to that. Yeah, so as mentioned, we have launched our own glass tube range. All of our machines come with a water chiller. I think it's something that is necessary. Toby's probably more of an expert in that sort of glass tube machine than myself. Having owned them for many years. All your machines, Toby got a water chiller with them?
Yeah, all the Chinese machines that we use have got industrial chillers that you can buy fairly readily on AliExpress, for instance. And if you order one, then you'll get one within 7 days. Anywhere between £200 to £500, depending on the size of the laser tube. If it's a 60 watt tube or below, then you should be okay with what you would call a 3.2 kilowatt chiller. And you'll see those straight away if you do a search on them. Anything above that, you want at least a 5. That's
great advice. Thank you, Toby. And that, guys, concludes all the live questions we have. So thank you very much for taking the time today, Toby. It was great to find out more about all of your businesses, and thank you for giving us an insight into how you got started as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Toby. Most appreciated.
Thanks for having us, gents. It was a pleasure dialing in.
No problem, and thank you as well, Chris, for taking the time out of your day to be our expert panel. Oh, 1 second. We have time for one more question. Graham's left another comment. I do apologise. Looking at laser engraving currently, which is why I've come this afternoon to Toby's comments. Okay, so he's more focused towards the laser than the CNC. Do you sell mostly? I think this will be for you, Toby, from Amy. Do you sell mostly on your website or on other social media platforms? Because she's a new startup as well.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. That's obviously it's a key question. I think most people in this line of work tend to start on eBay simply because it's got a history and people tend to have accounts going back many years, so they're familiar with it. If I was starting out, I would probably err towards going towards Etsy if you're making your own products. It's a bit easier to use and it's a bit more seller friendly than eBay, and Etsy give you a really good deal on setting up your own website for £15 a month, which is a price that's really hard to beat. If you can produce goods in quantity, then I think Amazon sellers tend to be, you can't beat Amazon as a platform. I think it's £3 out of every four are spent online or on Amazon. So unless you, unfortunately, unless you have an Amazon presence, you're never going to realize huge revenues quickly. The goal, I think, for most online sellers is to generate most of their revenue through their own website, but that takes generally a considerable amount of time to achieve. It's good to have a great website, but you have to expect to spend an awful lot of money on marketing, particularly paying Google for Google Ads. So there's many more online sales platforms out there. When you look, there's Bonanza in the States, there's Cdiscount in France, there's New Monday in Glasgow, and then there's all the standard ones that we used to, which are eBay, Amazon, and Etsy. As I said right at the start, Etsy is probably the friendliest and easiest place to start.
Definitely great advice, Toby. Thank you, and Amy's thank you. So thank you for your insight into that one. We've got Paul's asked a question as well, and this is software related. They're coming in thick and fast now. I was a bit premature. What design software do you use for 2D? So we think probably meaning 2D designs specifically.
Yeah.
Can you guys go for any tips?
Chris, do you want to say what you use first?
We use CorelDRAW in the showroom here, so I use CorelDRAW every day. That's what I use. I've used Adobe Illustrator before. It's all compatible with the Trotec lasers. We use a printer driver, a file print process. So any software that we can run a printer driver from, you can use with our lasers. Toby, you use a different one?
Yeah, so we do use CorelDRAW like yourself, and also Illustrator. When you work with these machines, you need to be very familiar with using what's called vector graphics editors, of which CorelDRAW and Adobe Illustrator are examples. They are typically quite expensive, but there are open source versions that you can download for free. The most common one is Inkscape, which has arguably as much functionality as paid-for versions at the expense of being a little bit buggy. So we have, because of the number of staff that we have, some of whom work in remote locations from time to time, we can't justify the cost of multiple CorelDRAW or Illustrator licenses. So we use Inkscape for our workflow. So if you're starting out, I would definitely recommend having a look at using Inkscape. As I say, it's a free download, and you can install it straight away on a PC or a Mac. For Chinese machines, they work a little bit differently. It's worth looking at the Lightburn software that's published by a US vendor, which it drives Chinese lasers, but also has basic vector graphics editing capabilities built in, so you can actually design within the software that you use to control the laser as well, which comes in very, very handy. There's a wide variety of other offerings out there of the paid-for versions. Affinity Designer is probably the best or well thought of. I think the license is very affordable. I think a perpetual license costs something like £25.
That's great. Thank you again, Toby. And Paul said that's awesome advice. So thank you for that one, guys. Well, that was some good questions coming in there at the end, and that's all that are there at the moment. So as I was saying before, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you guys for your time today. It's been very good, and obviously you've been giving some great insight to the guys who've been watching there. So thank you again.
No, appreciate it. Big thanks for Toby for coming on. Like I said before, big thanks.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you very much. If you guys are generally watching, we are having our next Q&A session in December. It'll be our final one for the year, so make sure to tune in for that. We'll let you know when it's going on. Thank you again for tuning in today, and happy lasering.